Let me ask you about the SDRs. You've just said that you are looking into trying to use them, what you have already, for developing countries. At the same time, you have called on the G20 to support the creation of more special drawing rights. The Trump administration is not on board. Can you change the White House's mind?
What I want to start from is that where everybody is on board is for strong, decisive action now. We do have $1 trillion lending capacity, and we got the full endorsement of our IMFC. This is the governing body of the IMF. They're telling us, lean forward with what you have. And we are doing exactly that. We are doubling our emergency financing. We are taking very decisive actions on expanding what we have, like the creation of a short-term liquidity line. And in addition to that, we are mobilizing concessional financing for our low-income members. And what impressed me tremendously today is that we are making a call for $17 billion to increase concessional financing. I made this call yesterday. Today, we got 70% of this funding secured. Now, when it comes to SDRs, the consensus is not there. But where we heard from the membership an encouragement, again, in the spirit of do what you can now, is to look more closely into existing SDRs. Advanced economies have them, don't need them. Developing countries need them, and the question is how to create a bridge so we can move resources, more liquidity support to emerging markets. And as we step up our work, we need to recognize that the problem is gigantic. The resources we have to deploy are significant, and we need to move with what we have very, very rapidly.
So far, at least by the end of April, you will have helped 50 countries, but more than 100 have asked for assistance. And there is a hierarchy, Kristalina. What do you need from private creditors, for example, in order to do more for those countries you haven't yet been able to help?
What we achieved during this week is quite incredible. We got official bilateral creditors to agree on a standstill in the context of G20. So we have the Paris Club, but also the Gulf countries, China, India, all coming together to provide breathing space to our poorest members. And in that call, we also turn to the private creditors, and we are asking them to step up and in the terms of the official bilateral creditors to also ease the debt burden on low-income countries. Now, we need to recognize that this is a highly uncertain environment. We need to carefully watch how the crisis evolves. Our projections are dire as they are, but epidemiologists are telling us it may get even worse. And therefore, as we look into this picture, we have to bring everybody on board. We need to make sure that we all are in this together, because liquidity problem turning into solvency problem is a much bigger problem. We have to prevent that from happening.
And remittances, Kristalina, are becoming a huge problem as well. And I know that the amount of remittances also plays a role in your hierarchy of assistance. But the trouble with remittances is that they're putting pressure on currencies, and EM currencies are weakening. In that context, do you anticipate any Asian countries looking for help from the IMF and World Bank?
Well, at this point, what we are seeing is Asia is staying flat. In other words, we are not projecting negative growth for Asia as we do for the world as a whole. We do have in Asia some countries that have built since the global financial crisis strong buffers, and that helps them now in this more difficult time. But of course, we are there for the membership, and actually creating the a short-term liquidity line is something that we believe is very helpful for strong countries. They may experience short-term liquidity pressure, and then we can help with that. In terms of the requests that are coming to the fund, I can tell you that they are many low-income countries, but there are also some middle-income countries that are saying we want to get that additional cushion, or they're seeing the dramatic developments because of their economies being more dependent on hard-hit sectors, be it tourism, or because of the point you made in the beginning, remittances shrinking or even drying up. We're there for the whole membership. And let me make one very important point. This is not a crisis caused by bad governance. It is a crisis caused by pandemic.
Yes.
And in that sense, there is no stigma coming to the IMF, and the emergency assistance is not with strings attached and conditionalities. The only thing we are asking is spend money for your doctors and nurses and to protect vulnerable people and sectors in the economy.
Speaking of middle-income countries, do you think Europe should consider seriously a joint bond issuance, debt mutualization? When will the IMF have a position on that, Kristalina?
Well, the view of the IMF is threefold. One, we strongly endorse the steps that have been taken in Europe by individual European countries, but also by the European Central Bank and the European institutions. They're large, appropriately so, and they are done with good targeting as well as with temporary nature of some of these measures. Secondly, Europe already has some mutualization through the European stability mechanism and also through the European budget,
but Corona bonds are a hot topic.
And three, let me get to that. And three, the European countries are actually debating how they can provide more precautionary more of a buffer against this crisis. And as you know, the debate is ongoing in Europe. Everybody who knows Europe knows that sometimes it takes a while for countries to come together. My conviction is that Europe will stand together in the face of this crisis.
Okay, well, that's a positive outcome, I guess. Talk to us about Argentina, because we are expecting the offer will be made to foreign creditors today for $69 billion. Have you spoken with the finance minister, Minister Guzman, at all about this, Kristalina?
My team is in close communication with Minister Guzman. I haven't spoken personally to him recently, but I have been in communication with him and the president of Argentina multiple times. What I can say is that our assessment is that first, Argentina has taken strong measures in the face of COVID-19, despite of the difficulties the country has. Second, that they are acting in good faith. They're going to put an offer because they do not want to default. They want to find a pathway to an agreement with their creditors. And third, that we need to also all recognize the world has changed, and countries that were with difficulties before are having even more difficulties now. I do wish well to Argentina, and I do hope that there would be a constructive engagement. Of course, it is for Argentina to negotiate with the creditors, but it would be good for Argentina and for everybody in this incredibly uncertain environment if we have some good news coming.
Kristalina, what, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the thing that you would wish for in terms of the SDRs right now? Do you need to expand the amount of money that you have at your disposal? And if so, who can you count on for that?
Well, let me say that I have full confidence that for the next months when we are striving to stabilize the emerging market developing economies that are hit by this crisis, we do have financial strength that is sufficient to do our job. Let me remind everybody that before the global financial crisis, the IMF had $250 billion lending capacity. Now we have 4 times more. I'm also convinced that the membership would come through should the conditions are more adverse. And we have seen that we can find solutions to common problems effectively. We did it in the past. We have done some of it today, raising concessional financing. If the needs are there, we would do it again.